1973, Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin, perished in Amazing Spider-Man number 122. The Green Goblin's evil legacy refused to die. Two people tried to resurrect the Green Goblin, but failed to do so. Then in November of 1982, in the shadows of evil's past, a new Goblin would emerge to become one of Spidey's most dangerous foes. In this episode of Tony's Comic Spotlight, we will explore the first appearance of the Hobgoblin by shining the spotlight on Amazing Spider-Man issue number 238 from 1982.
If you are enjoying the content, please feel free to like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring the bell to be notified of our latest videos. Feel free to leave a comment as well. I hope you enjoy the video. And now, on to our featured story.
The Amazing Spider-Man in Shadows of Evil's Past. Peter Parker is joining his Aunt May and Nathan Lubinsky at the Tax Authority of New York in order to get Aunt May's license to operate as a special status landlady for her boarding house for the elderly from her home. Peter's musings about it being the home where Spider-Man grew up causes him to think back to his youth growing up in that home with Aunt May and Uncle Ben. From there he recalls how he got his spider powers and the death of Uncle Ben, something Peter still blames himself over because he could have caught the crook responsible days earlier. Peter then thinks how great Nathan Lubinsky has been for his aunt, as he had invested his own savings to help May get her home off the ground. With all the paperwork filed away, the trio decides to go and celebrate. Out on the street, Peter's spider sense begins to go off, and he narrowly avoids a car spinning out of an alleyway. Soon a police car pulls up and asks if they are okay, and explains that the speeding car is involved in a bank robbery. Furious that his Aunt May and her fiancé almost got hurt, Peter tells them that he needs to go and rushes off. Peter quickly changes into Spider-Man and hitches a ride on the pursuing police car. Needing the money, he webs his camera onto the flashers of the police car to snap action photos for the Daily Bugle. Spider-Man then leaps across to the evading car and smashes his way inside. This forces the crooks to crash their car. However, one of them, George Hill, is thrown clear from the car and he tries to escape. Spider-Man follows after him but is briefly disoriented when George tosses a smoke bomb at him. This doesn't stop Spider-Man from spotting his escape down a manhole cover. Spider-Man follows after him into the sewers. Fearing capture, George wonders what to do next when he suddenly leans on a secret door. Finding the air inside fresher than the sewers, George goes inside, losing Spider-Man. The wall crawler returns to the surface empty-handed and follows up with the police before heading off. Grabbing his camera along the way, unknown to Spider-Man, he was not far from an Osborn manufacturing building. While below the surface, George explores the strange tunnel that he discovered and is shocked when it leads him to a secret room containing the equipment of the Green Goblin. Meanwhile, Aunt May and Nathan return home and is disappointed that there are no messages for her upon her arrival. When she enters the house, the phone begins to ring. May answers it, hoping it is her nephew Peter, but it turns out to be her longtime friend Anna Watson, who has been living in Florida. Anna congratulates May on starting her boarding house and tells her that Mary Jane has been staying with her for a while. At that very moment, Peter Parker has returned to his apartment and tries to call Aunt May, but discovers that the line is busy. With his new photos developed, he takes them to the Daily Bugle. There, Joe Robertson is impressed with Peter's photos, telling the young photographer that they are his best yet. Peter tries to call Aunt May again, but the line is still busy. When Joe tells the copy boy to take the pictures to be printed, the copy boy mentions the chase ended at the Osborn facility. This causes Peter to recollect his old nemesis, Norman Osborn, the original Green Goblin, and how he had learned Peter's secret identity. As he thinks about how Osborn was responsible for the death of Gwen Stacy, his thoughts are interrupted by the very generous check for the photos. Joe then offers to give Peter a ride back out to Forest Hills to see his aunt. At that moment, George Hill takes a mysterious man to the Green Goblin's underground hideout. The man is very interested to find the Goblin's old equipment and journals and tells George to load it all up into his van. Shortly thereafter, Joe Robertson and Peter are on their way to Forest Hills, as Joe tells Peter not to be a stranger as he focuses more and more on his studies. They hear a radio report about a fire that has broken out at the Osborn manufacturing plant. There, Peter discovers that Lance Bannon beat him to the fire to take photos. When Joe questions the firemen on the scene about the source of the fire, they say it started in a room that was not on any of the blueprints. With the fire put out, Peter asks to go inside and check it out. Granted access, Peter looks at the secret room and recognizes it as one of the places where the Green Goblin stashed his equipment. Peter worries that he knows he might have looted the room. Joe then gets a call from Aunt May for Peter, and he tells her that he will meet her for dinner and tells Joe that he's going to walk the rest of the way. As he leaves, Peter worries that the crook he chased into the sewers was the one who found the Goblin's old lair. Later that evening in the South Bronx, George Hill has finished emptying out the equipment from the van for his employer. The mystery man tells George to dispose of the van, but as he drives away, his employer sets it to explode, killing George. Inside his home, the man has dyed the Green Goblin costumes to suit his needs, trying out the equipment, and is impressed by Norman Osborn's invented genius. With a new mask molded, the man dresses himself up in his new costume and intends to use his newfound power to continue where Norman Osborn left off. However, this man proclaims that the Green Goblin is dead and calls himself the Hobgoblin. The Hobgoblin is a costumed identity of supervillains appearing in American comic books published by Marvel Comics, most of whom are depicted as enemies of the superhero Spider-Man and belong to the collective of adversaries that make up his rogues gallery. Created by writer Roger Stern and artist John Romita Jr., the Hobgoblin was introduced in the pages of The Amazing Spider-Man issue 238 as a criminal mastermind equipped with Halloween-themed weapons similar to those used by the Green Goblin. The Hobgoblin's true identity was one of the longest-running mysteries in the Spider-Man comics. In 1987, the first Hobgoblin was revealed to be Ned Leeds, Peter Parker's journalist co-worker at the Daily Bugle. In 1997, the first Hobgoblin was retroactively established to be Roderick Kingsley, a fashion designer and Mary Jane Watson's former boss, with Ned reframed as a fall guy. Other characters that have assumed the Hobgoblin mantle over the years include Lefty Donovan, Jason Masondale, Roderick's twin brother Daniel Kingsley, Spider-Man 2011's daughter Robin Bourne, Ben Urich's nephew Phil Urich, Kingsley's butler Claude. Leeds, Donovan, and Claude were first brainwashed via the Winkler device as part of a scheme orchestrated by the Kingsley brothers, while Kingsley, Masondale, Bourne, and Urich operate independently of the others. The Hobgoblin persona has also been utilized by Harry Osborn in the Amazing Spider-Man comic strip and Ultimate Marvel alternate continuities. The Hobgoblin has been adapted from the comics into various forms of media, including television series and video games. An amalgamated version of the character named Jason Phillips appeared in the 94-98 Spider-Man the Animated Series, voiced by Mark Hamill, while the Harry Osborn incarnation is featured in Spider-Man 2017 to 2018, voiced by Max Middleman. The Hobgoblin was created by writer Roger Stern and artist John Romita Jr. for The Amazing Spider-Man 238. Like other writers, Stern found himself under pressure to have Spider-Man fight the Green Goblin again, but did not wish to bring Norman Osborn or Bart Hamilton back from the dead, or have Harry Osborn be a villain again, or create yet another Green Goblin. Stern instead created a new Goblin as the heir to the Green Goblin's legacy and developed the Hobgoblin. Stern recounts that he directed Romita to base the costume on the Green Goblin's costume, but make it a little more medieval looking. While Romita asserts that he was given no direction beyond using the Green Goblin as a basis, both agree, however, that the costume was chiefly Romita's design. Hobgoblin's identity was not initially revealed, generating one of the longest-running mysteries in the Spider-Man comics. According to Stern, I plotted the first story with no strong idea of who the Hobgoblin was. As I was scripting those gorgeous pages from John Romita Jr., particularly the last third of the book, and developing the Hobgoblin's speech pattern, I realized who he was. It was Roderick Kingsley, that son of a bitch corporate leader I had introduced in my first issue of the Spectacular Spider-Man. A handful of readers deduced that Kingsley was the Hobgoblin almost immediately. To throw them off the scent, and in the same stroke to provide a retroactive explanation for Kingsley's inconsistent characterization in his earlier appearances, Stern came up with the idea of Kingsley having a brother named Daniel, who sometimes impersonates him, sealing the deception by having the Hobgoblin conspicuously appear in the same room as Daniel Kingsley in The Amazing Spider-Man number 249. Stern's original plan was to have the Hobgoblin's mysterious identity run exactly one issue longer than that of the Green Goblin's identity, meaning the truth would be revealed in The Amazing Spider-Man number 264. However, Stern left after ASM 251, and editor Tom DeFalco took his place. Wanting to resolve the mystery in a manner that would do justice to Stern's stories, DeFalco asked Stern who the Hobgoblin was, but objected when Stern said it was Kingsley. DeFalco argued that the twin brother scheme was cheating the readers, since there had been no hint that Roderick ever had a brother aside from a single thought bubble, much less one could serve as a body double. Stern disagreed, but said that DeFalco should feel free to choose whomever he wanted for the Hobgoblin's secret identity, reasoning that I knew that whoever Tom chose, he would make it work. Upon reviewing the clues, DeFalco decided that the Hobgoblin was going to be Richard Fisk. He opted to prolong the mystery of his identity as long as possible, since it was the chief element that made the Hobgoblin interesting. Through both Stern and DeFalco's runs, the answer was continuously teased on the cover art, with the covers of The Amazing Spider-Man 245, 251, and 276 all showing Spider-Man having unmasked the Hobgoblin. The mystery was further complicated after James Owsley came on as editor of the Spider-Man titles. Owsley's relationship with DeFalco and artist Ron Frenz was strained from the beginning. When Owsley asked who the Hobgoblin was at a creators' conference, DeFalco lied and said it was Ned Leeds. Owsley then wrote the one-shot Spider-Man vs. Wolverine, in which Leeds is killed off, though the actual death is not shown, and instructed the spectacular Spider-Man writer Peter David to reveal the Hobgoblin's identity as the Foreigner. David objected and argued that the only person who fit the clues was Leeds, having been present at the Spider-Man Creators Conference. David also thought that Leeds was who DeFalco intended it to be. Because Spider-Man vs. Wolverine had already been drawn, however, it was too late to undo Leeds' death. Thus, the Hobgoblin's identity was revealed posthumously in the double-sized The Amazing Spider-Man 289. With Spider-Man's arch-enemy now dead, a new storyline was created for Jason Masendale's hatred of the Hobgoblin. Though the Hobgoblin's posthumous unmasking as Leeds was unpopular with fans, David said in a 2009 interview of still being proud of the story, arguing that the Hobgoblin, being unmasked in a climactic battle with Spider-Man, was the sort of tale readers had already seen countless times before, whereas having an arch-villain unmasked in a flashback after having been brutally killed by nameless assassins was unprecedented and shocking. Masendale supplemented the original Hobgoblin for a decade. Initially, he wielded only the weaponry of his predecessor, but during the 1988-89 Inferno crossover written by Jerry Conway, it had Masendale imbued with demonic powers by the demon Naaster. In addition to power over Hellfire and strength and speed far greater than his predecessor, Naaster also disfigures Masendale so that his head resembles the Hobgoblin mask, and ultimately alters his mind so that he is deluded into thinking that his appearance is normal. Several years later, in issues of The Amazing Spider-Man, Masendale succeeds in purging himself of his demonic powers, leaving the demon that Naaster imbued him with to become the Demogoblin. Towards the end of Masendale's run as the Hobgoblin, he was revamped again, at this time with cybernetic implants. Stern was unhappy with the revelation that the Hobgoblin's civilian identity was Ned Leeds, and wrote the three-issue miniseries Spider-Man Hobgoblin Lives in 1997, with the retcon that Kingsley was the original Hobgoblin, while Leeds was brainwashed into serving him as a fall guy. In this miniseries, Masendale was killed off. According to Stern, initially he had not known how to resolve the situation of having two Hobgoblins, and it was at the suggestion of the editorial staff that he had Kingsley kill Masendale and return to operating as the Hobgoblin. I hope you enjoyed this look at Amazing Spider-Man 238 as we celebrated the first appearance of the Hobgoblin. If you're enjoying the content, please consider liking and subscribing, and don't forget to hit the bell for future notifications. And coming up in the next episode, we're going to take a look at the first appearance of Morpheus, aka Dream, in the pages of Sandman Volume 2, Issue Number 1 from 1988. So until then, everyone, be safe, take care, and God bless.